world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Let's talk to the author of a biography of John Bercow. It's called Call to Order, and the guest is Seb Whale. Good evening, Seb.
Good evening, Kevin. Good to be with you.
Thanks for joining us. Let's just have a little a reminder of our hero's heyday.
Order! The rights of my order! However irritating the honourable gentleman may be to government backbenchers, he has a right to be heard, and he will be heard.
Ridiculous theatrics, which was the tenor of all of his appearances in the House of Commons. You never saw one more self-satisfied than the opening of Parliament when he walked across in all his Speaker's finery. But in a way, Seb, it was always going to end badly for him because he so alienated the Tories with his passionate efforts on the part of Remain. He was a strange speaker, wasn't he?
He was definitely a memorable one for all the reasons you've just laid out. I think, whether it was all going to come to a head for him wasn't actually that clear-cut necessarily. I mean, bear in mind, he stood down in October 2019, and it's only now in 2022, March, that we find out finally what went on behind the scenes from an independent investigation. It took a long time to get there, and he was in the chair for more than 10 years. And these allegations date back many years. So there is some vindication for staff, and there are a myriad of reasons as to why it took so long to get to this point.
Did you, while you were researching your book, did you come across any hint of all this bullying behaviour? Yeah,
I came across a lot. Including to people who aren't currently associated with claims against him as reported today. You don't have to go too far to find a number of incidents with John Bercow, even with those who would say that he wasn't a bully. They had encounters with him behind the scenes because he has admitted to himself he's very prone to anger, he's prone to rage, and he doesn't like being thwarted, or in his eyes being thwarted. As a result of which he did, rub people up the wrong way continuously.
You'd be amused by this. I've had a text in from one of our listeners. It's Jenny in High Wycombe. I won't use the derogatory term that she uses about him, but she says, Kevin, Bercow was in my primary school, Frith Manor in Finchley. He was awful back then, and I even remember the class refrain was, "Oh, shut up, John." Now Bercow has been properly silenced at long last. Bercow was the most biased speaker ever. Interesting story from his early years there.
Well, there's plenty of those as well.
Are there?
Yeah. I mean, he actually was bullied quite badly at school. I think he certainly wasn't popular, but a lot of people, perhaps like Jenny, would say that he invited it on himself. Throughout his entire life, he's divided opinion. I mean, that's the one thing you can say about John Bercow is he absolutely, you love him or you really don't like him, and no more a politician has that been true than him in recent years.
Yeah, and I'll give him credit. I mean, he's faced this down. And when he heard that this verdict was going to be coming down on him, this was about a month ago, he sort of grasped the nettle and went to the Sunday Times and tried to preempt it by calling it a kangaroo court, and it wasn't fair. And he's been out doing the rounds today. He's been on telly saying it's outrageous. But he's not going to dig himself out of this one. I mean, the verdict, 21 guilty counts. It could not have been worse for him, could it?
No, it couldn't. And also the combination of the report, the strength of words, the fact they recommended that he was banned effectively from the parliamentary estate. It was absolutely damning. And, John Bercow has sought to sully the waters on this whole process. As you say, he preempted the report in January, spoke to the Sunday Times, called it a kangaroo court, said it was an insult to kangaroos or whatever, usual stuff. And but the fact is pretty clear cut. I think anyone can read that report, 89 pages. When I've been reporting on John Bercow, I'm neutral as much as I can be as a journalist on this. And when I've reported what other people have said about him, depending on what their political views might be, they just bury their heads in the sand. They don't want to hear it. And this is 89 pages of pretty comprehensive stuff about his behaviour. And if you continue to defend him or say it's or dismiss the claims, then that's on you personally.
Not so long ago, he cherished the hope that he would be elevated to the upper chamber, become Lord John Bercow. Now, not only has that not spectacularly not happened, also, as you quite rightly said, they've taken away his parliamentary pass. So, in effect, he's been banned from the Palace of Westminster for life, which is dreadful. Now, while you're researching your book or over your career, have you met him often? How did you find him as a person?
So he didn't engage with me for the book because his autobiography came out around about the same time. So I spoke to about 140 people. So I pieced together everything kind of from accounts from people who worked with him to his best friends and all that kind of thing. And, I think he's a fascinating character, right? So, put to one side, your views on Brexit, for example, because that will load kind of how you think about him. He is a fascinating character, but part of the reason why he's fascinating is because he has this dark side to him. And, as you research and learn more about him, he becomes more complicated and you try and find motivations or the reasons why he's come to be. And, there's a very fascinating past, but ultimately, he treated people poorly. And when people think about his legacy, it absolutely has to feature front and center now. People can't keep just denying it.
Yeah, I was reminded of that amusing story, apocryphal or otherwise, that when Prime Minister David Cameron nicked his parking space at the House of Commons, a furious Bercow stomped over to him and shouted, "Prime Minister, I'm not happy." And Cameron said, "Well, which one are you then?" Let's try and be. Does he have any good points?
Well, look, I think the reason that he divides opinion, you can speak to any number of MPs who would say wonderful things about him. I think he can be very generous. I think he can be very kind, empathetic, sensitive. And these are words, by the way, not mine, but words of people who actually did work with him. However, in a sense, he imbues a sense of loyalty from people that makes them completely blind to claims from people who didn't have that experience. So, with Bercow, nothing's ever really that clear cut. There's lots, as I said, he seeks to sully the waters. And I think there are plenty of people who will say lots of good things about what he's done behind the scenes for charity, for example, or for them individually. And I think as a speaker, you will disagree with me, I sense, but I think he was very creative, right? He was creative and he made sure that the Commons was a force. For right or wrong, I appreciate you'll have strong views on that. So there are, plus points to his legacy, but we can't keep brushing under the carpet what happened behind the scenes or qualifying it with, but he was a bit of a bully. No, he treated people poorly. It should never have happened. And it was wrong that it was allowed to happen.
Your book, Call to Order, still available at all the usual outlets. Doesn't pull any punches, but it's obviously a very fair and encyclopedically researched book. After the publication, did you encounter him? Did he give you any response to your great tome?
So it was published the day after lockdown. So no is the short answer. However, I did hear, some of his close friends seemed pretty happy with it. And I did the best job that I could do in as neutrally as I could. But as you say, it didn't pull no punches. There was plenty of stuff in there that is included in the report today and from other people as well. Because, frankly, there was no shortage of it. There was no shortage of anecdotes of people having run-ins with John Bercow.
On a political front, didn't he realise that it wasn't really his job? But what possessed him to take the job of being Speaker of the House? That, famously neutral job, that famously non-partisan, unbiased job, and turn it into a biased job. He actively did all he could to thwart the Brexit vote. What possessed him to think that was the right thing to do?
I think what you'll find with John Bercow is that he will convince himself, like, for example, with the bullying stuff, right? So he's convinced that he never bullied anybody. And you can see his obdurance in his media rounds today. He's absolutely categorical about it. And I think he can convince himself of various things. In terms of why he became Speaker, there's myriad of reasons. But I think one is that it was an outlet for him to achieve political success, right? It was a position of high stature that he could put himself forward for and have some influence, which he wasn't going to have in the Conservative Party, which he was in at the time. I think, on the terms of the bias stuff, the big mistake he made was revealing how he voted in the EU referendum, because everything he did from that point on was seen through the prism of the fact that he was an open Remain supporter. And so even if I think sometimes he actually used Parliament to give, if you think about, we could go, this is a whole big subject, but at the beginning of the Brexit process, MPs weren't going to vote on the EU deal, right? And Bercow, he was part of that process to ensure that they did. So I think he did some good things for Parliament, but the fact that he couldn't just keep his mouth shut and reveal, how he voted in the referendum, and that everything was seen as bias, as you say.
Last point, Seb. The last I heard, he was actually these sort of vocal greeting cards that you can get. Celebrities record little messages. He was recording them with it going, "Order, happy birthday, Seb," or whatever. So that didn't strike me as being the kind of loftiest of careers. What do you think the future is for him?
Well, it's a good question. I think the truth is that people who, he's gone on TV quite a lot. He was a member of the Labour Party. I think people will be a lot more wary of John Bercow now with working with him, given this report and how damning it is. Before all this, if you remember pre-pandemic, he was going on kind of European TV shows and so forth.
Right, yeah.
But I don't, that could still be an option if people haven't caught up with what's going on here. But I think, in truth, his options are narrowing now.
I do believe that you're right. So your book, Call to Order, available all the usual outlets. Thank you so much, Seb. Great to talk to you.
Good talk. Hot talk.
Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.